Okay, here it is, first stretch. So that back is tight. It's acting up a little bit. All we're gonna do is very slowly, none of this is a fast motion, but just slowly, we're gonna go into that child's pose. So as you can see, my knees are up. This is actually shortening and tightening my hip flexors. But what it's doing isn't just lengthening or rounding the lower back. You see how I can like round here and kind of do a cat camel style? I'm not just rounding. What I'm doing is I'm forcing active, increased range of motion in lumbar flexion and hip flexion, range of motion flexibility through the pain, but very carefully so I don't get hurt. So we're just gonna make sure that I feel that tight area opening up just a little past what would typically be integrity, but not enough to get hurt. And then I wanna continue with the cat-cow where I'm mobilizing and rounding slightly and dropping my pelvis so I get my knees at a comfortable depth. I have my hands in a proper position. They could be a little closer, they might be a little farther away, but just from here, it's like a spike coming up to my stomach. So the spike's coming up to my stomach and I round just a little and drop it down. I round just a little and drop it down. I'm creating stability and mobility, okay? Now, let's go ahead and work on those hip flexors. So I can start off by simply doing, sorry my head is out of the camera, okay? Sorry my head's out of the camera, but I can sit up straight and come into hip extension without forcing my back so much over here. I know, little knees over toes action. Okay, I'm not gonna do that, there's no need. But what I am gonna do is open up this hip by one leg forward, one knee down. And what I do here is I actually flex my glute. I'm gonna contract my glute until that quad and hip flexor opens up on the inside near the groin. It's opening up and stretching. I can put my hands up in the air, which is not pictured right now, but watch the motion, how I sit my hip forward, and it's opening up my pelvis. I can do that for both sides. If your knee is uncomfortable on the ground, put a small pillow or a towel or a roll, okay? For me, the right side is always tighter than the left. Now, let's get into the magic. I'll get closer, even though typically I do this on the carpet. So here is the lacrosse ball or the baseball. For us real flexible athletes, I do recommend a baseball. And it's above my hip crease and in the psoas muscle in the tender spots. Okay? Now the key to this is finding the tender spots. If you find a good tender spot, like this is over here, just above the hip bone, that's a nice tender spot after a 3-mile run, but the hips are tight. Yeah. My motion is little tiny circles, a little up and down. See this? A little up and down, some tiny circles. I can get down to a spot that's really tender. This is again going more towards the lateral groin over there, okay? It's a little tender. Again, not on the bone, it's all on those muscles and tendons. And then I can just lay in it for a few seconds. I can go all the way up to getting close to that bottom rib. I can get close to that bottom rib. And again, that's a nice feeling. Feel it even poking through a little bit in the lower back. And I can just come up on that baseball. I can pop it into my left side. This is now on the opposite side of the camera. Ooh, that is a comfortably uncomfortable feeling right there. Very important though. Again, you don't see it right now, but again, if I come up on the camera, see that baseball? That is buried right in that anterior muscle. So it's right here, it's right there. If I was to flex my abs, and you can see a little bit, which I don't have much abs these days, right up under this crease here in that soft tissue. Okay, you wanna get right in there. The ball is gonna do the work with your body weight doing the rest of the work. Again, this is the key. Now, you might say, all right, once more, Dr. Perlman, how does this work and fix my back pain? Somebody told me I should roll my back. Somebody told me that I should, activate my glutes and all that. Yeah, that all matters. It all matters. All of these pieces matter. But actually being able to lengthen a tight psoas, right? Because our psoas is short and tight from being in flexion. It's buckling down because everything around there is, just think of it as tight. Why? Because either we're sitting too much or we're even training too much or bracing these vulnerable discs. Because if one of those lumbar discs goes out, for all the people out there that have had the worst kind of back pain, when one of those discs, really tears big and the annular fibers tear, it hurts. If any of that nucleus comes out or even parts of the annulus and touches one of those nerve roots, even a little, or even inflammation from the disc interfering with the nerve root, that's gonna cause those terrible, terrible, terrible back pains that send you to the chiropractor or the physical therapist, or, some people think, the massage is what's gonna help them there. So this lengthens that psoas muscle, which allows the posterior muscles that are also lengthened to shorten. And that's what you want. You want that neutral, nice, non-lengthened stretch fibers of the posterior chain. And you want that psoas to be super open. We all know David Goggins. We all love Goggins. And if you don't, look him up. He talked about how all his running woes and all that pain in his lower back and some of the other symptoms he had with like this bulge on like the back of his neck went away when he started to control the psoas. And all of that, to him, he credited for like an hour, 2 hours of stretching. Axel, no. Dr. Axel, yeah, don't do that. The stretching, so, well, anyways, I'm not gonna go on about that. This is how I've done it. So what I'll do is, I'll come up. Here, let's do this. I'll come up from that routine, and I come up slow, okay? Because all that's gonna change the sensation around here. Your back should feel a lot looser, but also a little vulnerable. And I can do something like where I'm on my fingers, rounding my neck, do a little push off my fingers. And now concentric, but into eccentric, I'm still controlling and rounding. And I haven't limited myself to being able to round. I used to not be able to round before feeling it in the lower back. I'm not saying that those are your symptoms, but I am saying that whether you know it or not, that is what you're training up to. You are, whether you know it or not, you are preventing the disc fibers from getting stretched in the back and actually really hurting your lower back with a disc injury by opening up your psoas muscle and being able to maintain not just a neutral spine, but then retraining. And I'm gonna make a part 2 of this video for the flexion, the glute hamstring raises for my patients. You know what I'm talking about? Because what I'm gonna do is show you how, again, knees over toes guy, he's the one that turned me onto this. It's not just about, the overall simple way to think about it is you can train your muscles in flexibility and getting strong simultaneously. So the way to think about that on a deeper level is we always train the concentric portion. We're training biceps concentrically, but they're gonna eventually tear when we go eccentric because we never train those negatives to get flexible and strong simultaneously to be able to handle that type of resistance, not concentrically. The same thing applies for the back. So we work on eccentric lengthening and strengthening so the back can actually tolerate being in flexion. Yeah. All right, that's part 1 of this video. Sorry it's a little long. Deal with it. Play it on double speed. See ya.